Admiral Kexthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue and green planet slowly rotate beneath them. His four eyes studied the readouts with growing confidence. This world called Earth looked exactly like what the reports had promised, a primitive backwater, filled with simple creatures who barely knew how to leave their own atmosphere. The Zephyrian Empire had been watching this planet for nearly 60 Earth years. Their long-range sensors showed a species that spent most of its time fighting itself. These humans used crude chemical rockets that could barely reach their own moon. Their weapons were simple metal projectiles fired by explosive charges. They even polluted their own air and water, something no intelligent species would ever do. Perfect mining conditions, Kexthor muttered to his second-in-command. No real technology to worry about. No space fleet to fight us. Just another easy conquest. The mining fleet stretched out behind his flagship like a metal snake in space. 300 ships ready to strip every valuable mineral from the planet below. The humans wouldn't even know what hit them. Most primitive species just surrendered when they saw ships this big appearing in their sky. Commander Yextal activated the communication array. "Shall I send the standard surrender message, Admiral?" "Of course. Though I doubt these primitives will even understand it properly." Kexthor settled back in his command chair. "Make sure to use simple words. These creatures probably can't handle complex concepts." The message went out across all human communication frequencies. It was the same message the Zephyrian Empire had sent to dozens of primitive worlds before. Simple terms. Basic demands. Surrender now or face destruction. Hand over all resources. Accept Zephyrian rule. Standard procedure. Kexthor expected the usual response. Either complete silence from a terrified population, or some kind of desperate begging message asking for mercy. What he got instead made his four eyes widen in surprise. The humans responded within 1 hour. Not with surrender. Not with begging. They sent back what they called a business proposal. "Admiral," Yextal said, his voice uncertain. "The primitives want to negotiate." "Negotiate?" Kexthor laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Primitives don't negotiate with their betters." "What exactly are they saying?" The human message played on the main screen. A middle-aged human female appeared, wearing what looked like formal clothing. She spoke calmly, as if talking to equals rather than superior beings who could destroy her world with a thought. "Greetings to the Zephyrian fleet. I am Secretary General Martinez of the United Earth Government. We have received your message regarding resource extraction from our planet. We would like to propose a mutually beneficial arrangement instead of the terms you have suggested." Kexthor's jaw dropped. Mutually beneficial? These primitives thought they had something to offer? The human continued. "We understand you are interested in our planet's mineral resources. We also understand that your technology is more advanced than ours. However, we believe that cooperation rather than conquest would serve both our peoples better. We formally request a meeting to discuss terms that would benefit everyone involved." The message ended. The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of ship systems. Did that primitive just refuse to surrender? Commander Yextal asked. "Worse," Kexthor growled. "It thinks it can make deals with us, like we're equals." But something nagged at the Admiral's mind. The human had spoken with complete confidence. No fear, no desperation. She acted like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. That was strange for a primitive facing certain destruction. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're getting reports from our surveillance teams." "What kind of reports?" "The humans appear to be moving things. Large objects. Our sensors can't quite make out what they're doing, but there's a lot of activity on their planet's surface." Kexthor frowned. "Moving things where?" "Unknown, sir. But whatever they're doing it fast. And they're doing it all over their planet at the same time." This was getting strange. Primitives usually panicked when faced with superior technology. They ran around screaming, or they hid, or they just gave up. They didn't calmly send business proposals and start mysterious construction projects. "Admiral," another officer reported, "long-range sensors are picking up energy signatures from the humans' moon." "Their moon? What kind of energy signatures?" "Unknown type, sir. But they're big. Much bigger than anything we've seen from this species before." Kexthor stood up and walked to the main display. The Earth turned slowly below them, looking peaceful and harmless. But something was wrong with this picture. The humans were acting like they had a plan, like they knew something he didn't. Get me a direct line to High Command, he ordered. I think we need to report some unusual behavior from these primitives. The connection to the Zephyrian homeworld took several minutes to establish. When it did, High Commander Zorthak's face appeared on the screen. His expression showed the usual boredom that came with routine conquest reports. Admiral Kexthor, I trust the primitive world is ready for mining operations? Not exactly, sir. The humans have responded with a request to negotiate. High Commander Zorthak's expression changed from bored to amused. They want to negotiate? How entertaining. What do these primitives think they can offer us? I don't know, sir. But they're acting very strange. They're not scared. They're moving large objects around their planet, and they're generating unknown energy signatures from their moon. The amusement faded from Zorthak's face. Unknown energy signatures? From primitives who barely have space travel? Yes, sir. My science teams can't identify the energy type. It's not anything in our databases. A long pause. High Commander Zorthak was clearly thinking about this new information. Finally, he spoke. Admiral, you will proceed with standard conquest protocols. If the primitives want to play games, show them what happens to species who refuse Zephyrian generosity. Begin orbital bombardment in 12 hours if they don't surrender unconditionally. Yes, sir. The communication ended. Kexthor turned back to his crew. You heard the High Commander. Prepare the bombardment cannons. If these humans want to pretend they're important, we'll show them the difference between primitive dreams and advanced reality. But as the Admiral gave his orders, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong here. In his 40 years of military service, he had conquered 17 primitive worlds. None of them had ever acted like this. None of them had ever seemed so prepared. Commander Yextal approached him quietly. Admiral, what if the humans really do have something we don't know about? Impossible, Kexthor replied, but his voice lacked conviction. They're primitives. They use chemical rockets and metal bullets. What could they possibly have that would threaten us? As if in answer to his question, the ship's alarm suddenly rang out across the bridge. Admiral, the sensor operator called out in panic. Multiple energy spikes detected across the Earth's surface. Unknown weapon systems are powering up. Kexthor rushed to the sensor display. All across the planet below, massive energy readings were appearing. Whatever the humans had been building, they were turning it on. That's impossible, he whispered. Primitives can't build weapons that powerful, but the sensors didn't lie. And as Admiral Kexthor watched the readings climb higher and higher, he began to realize that maybe, just maybe, the Zephyrian Empire had made a very serious mistake about these humans. The primitives weren't acting scared because they weren't primitives at all. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had never been called so quickly. Representatives from 300 different species filled the massive chamber on Nexus Prime, the artificial ring world that served as the galaxy's seat of government. The air buzzed with confused chatter in dozens of languages, as beings tried to understand what was happening in a small star system called Saul. Counselor Vorthak. The ancient silicon-based entity that had lived for over 3,000 years called for order. His crystalline body glowed with soft blue light as he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. Fellow counselors, we face an unprecedented situation. The species from planet Earth has done something that should be impossible. The chamber filled with the various sounds of alien confusion. Clicking mandibles, hissing breath, electronic beeps from the mechanical species. Everyone wanted to know what made this primitive world different from the hundreds they had conquered before. The humans have reverse-engineered Zephyrian technology, Vorthak continued. Not over centuries, as would be expected. Not even over decades. They did it in months. A wave of disbelief swept through the chamber. Counselor Threxon of the Mollusk Confederation raised one of his tentacles to speak. Respected Vorthak, surely this is an error. No pre-space civilization has ever achieved such rapid technological advancement. The evidence is clear, Vorthak replied. 3 years ago, a Zephyrian scout ship crashed on Earth during a routine surveillance mission. The crew was killed on impact. The humans recovered the wreckage. Within 6 months, they had working copies of our gravity manipulation technology. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds. Gravity manipulation was Type 7 civilization technology. It had taken the Zephyrians 400 years to develop it after joining the Council. The idea that primitives could copy it so quickly was beyond belief. There must be some mistake, declared Counselor Vexith of the Hive Minds. Perhaps they had hidden technology all along. No, Vorthak said firmly. We have watched Earth for 60 of their years. They truly were primitive when we first found them. They fought with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They had not even achieved fusion power, yet somehow, they learned from a single crashed ship what it took our greatest scientists centuries to understand. High Commander Zorthak of the Zephyrian Empire stood to address the council. His warrior species was known for their military might, but even he looked shaken by recent events. The humans did not simply copy our technology, he said. They improved it. Our scout ships can achieve artificial gravity at 70% of planetary normal. The human copies achieve 95%. They made our own technology better than we could make it ourselves. A stunned silence fell over the chamber. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, no species had ever improved on technology they had stolen. Most couldn't even make proper copies. How is this possible? Asked Counselor Yildar of the Plant Collective. What makes these humans different? We don't know, Zorthak admitted. But it gets worse. Our intelligence reports suggest they have been preparing for contact with alien civilizations for much longer than we realized. Images appeared on the chamber's main display screen. Satellite photos of Earth showing construction projects, military installations, and research facilities that seemed to have no purpose when viewed individually, but when put together they formed a clear pattern. These facilities have been under construction for 50 Earth years, Zorthak explained, long before our first contact with them. Somehow they knew we were watching. They knew we would eventually come, and they used that time to prepare. Counselor Vorthak studied the images with growing unease. Show us their current military response. The display changed to show real-time footage from the Saul system. Earth looked different now. Strange structures had emerged from underground hiding places. The planet's moon was covered with what looked like massive weapons platforms. Ships that definitely hadn't existed a year ago were moving between Earth and its moon. They built all of this in secret, Zorthak said, while we watched them fight small wars with each other. They were actually building the largest military force we have ever seen from a single planet. Impossible, muttered Counselor Krental of the Energy Beings. No species could hide construction on this scale. The humans did more than hide it, Zorthak replied. They made us think they were still primitive while they built weapons that rival our own. Every war we watched, every conflict between their nations was actually a testing ground for new technology. The implications hit the Council like a shockwave. The humans hadn't been fighting each other out of primitive aggression. They had been testing weapons and tactics they planned to use against alien invaders. They used us, Vorthak said slowly. They let us watch them. They let us think we understood them. And while we were feeling superior, they were learning everything they could about us. What do we do now? Asked Counselor Meshitar of the Crystalline Worlds. We cannot allow this precedent to stand. If other primitive worlds learn that resistance is possible, we proceed with the conquest, declared High Commander Zorthak. The humans may have surprised us, but they are still just one planet. We have the resources of 300 worlds. They cannot stand against the full might of the Galactic Council. Many counselors made sounds of agreement. The humans had been clever, but cleverness could only go so far against overwhelming force. Vorthak was not so sure. In his 3,000 years of life, he had seen many surprises, but he had never seen a species prepare so thoroughly for a threat they weren't supposed to know about. I propose we attempt negotiation first, he said. The humans asked for talks. Perhaps we should find out what they really want. Negotiation? Zorthak's warrior pride was clearly offended. We do not negotiate with primitives who refuse our generous offer of conquest. These are not ordinary primitives, Vorthak warned. They have shown capabilities we did not think possible. Perhaps it would be wise to learn more about them before we commit to military action. But the Council had made up its mind. The vote was overwhelming. 847 in favor of proceeding with conquest, only 3 in favor of negotiation. The humans would be given one final chance to surrender unconditionally. If they refused, the full might of the Galactic Council would crush their foolish resistance. As the session ended and the various species began filing out of the chamber, Vorthak remained in his seat, studying the images of Earth's defenses. Something about the human preparations bothered him. They were too complete, too well planned. It was as if the humans had known exactly what the Council would do, which raised a terrifying question. If the humans had been watching the Council as closely as the Council had been watching them, what else did they know? And more importantly, what else were they prepared for? The ancient being's crystalline body dimmed as he contemplated the possibility that the Galactic Council was about to make the biggest mistake in its 3,000-year history. Admiral Kexthor had commanded space battles for 40 years. He had seen energy weapons that could crack planets, ships that could move faster than light, and defensive systems that could stop almost any attack. But he had never seen anything like what Earth was showing him now. The Zephyrian attack fleet moved into bombardment position around the primitive planet, ready to begin the systematic destruction that would force human surrender. Standard procedure called for destroying major cities first, then military installations, then anything else that might represent resistance. But as the fleet took position, the planet's surface came alive with weapons that shouldn't exist. Admiral, his sensor operator called out in panic. Massive energy spikes detected across the target world. What kind of energy spikes? Kexthor demanded. Unknown type, sir. They're bigger than anything in our database. The main screen lit up with tactical displays showing Earth's surface. Across every continent, huge structures were rising from underground bunkers. They looked like cannons, but they were enormous, some of them stretching for kilometers across the landscape. Rail cannons, breathed Commander Yextal, but they're impossible. No species has ever built them that large. The first human weapon fired, and Kexthor's world changed forever. A projectile screamed up from Earth's surface at 30% the speed of light. It punched through the shields of the Zephyrian cruiser Dominator like they weren't even there, tore through the ship's armor, and kept going until it hit the battleship behind it. Both ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Impossible, Kexthor shouted. Primitives can't build weapons with that much power. But the humans were just getting started. All across Earth's surface, the massive rail cannons began firing. Projectiles the size of buildings launched into space at speeds that should have been impossible for any species below Type 8 civilization level. Evasive maneuvers, Kexthor ordered. All ships scatter. But the human weapons tracked their targets with perfect accuracy. Every shot hit exactly where it was aimed. Within minutes, the Zephyrian fleet had lost 12 ships to weapons that weren't supposed to exist. How are they targeting us so precisely? Commander Yextal asked in disbelief. Unknown, sir. Their targeting systems are more advanced than ours. That was when Kexthor noticed something that made his four eyes widen in shock. Earth's moon was moving, not rotating on its axis like moons were supposed to do, actually moving through space, changing its orbit around the planet. Sensor report on the human moon, he ordered. Sir, it's not their moon anymore. It's a weapons platform. The entire surface is covered with mass drivers and energy projectors. And somehow they've turned the whole thing into a spacecraft. As if to prove the sensor operator's point, Luna opened fire. Asteroids the size of mountains launched from the moon's surface with impossible precision. They had turned their own moon into a fortress and a weapon at the same time. This is insane, Yextal muttered. How long would it take to build something like that? Decades, Kexthor replied grimly. They've been planning this for decades. But the real shock was yet to come. As the Zephyrian fleet tried to regroup and respond to the surface weapons, new contacts appeared on their sensors. Ships were emerging from the radiation belt around the gas giant the humans called Jupiter. Human ships. Lots of them, Admiral. We have 47. No, 68. No, over 100 human vessels approaching our position. Kexthor stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human ships looked nothing like proper spacecraft. They were angular, crude-looking things that seemed to have been built from scrap metal. But they were moving at speeds that should have turned any crew into paste. How are they accelerating so fast without killing their crews? Unknown, sir. But they're pulling 20 Gs and showing no signs of slowing down. That was impossible. Even Zephyrian ships with the best artificial gravity systems in the galaxy couldn't protect crews during maneuvers like that. Yet somehow these primitive humans were doing it. The human fleet split into attack formations with military precision. Their ships moved like they had been training for this battle their entire lives. Which Kexthor was beginning to realize they probably had been. Incoming transmission from the lead human vessel, his communications officer reported. Put it on screen. A human face appeared on the display. A middle-aged male wearing what looked like military clothing. He spoke with calm confidence like someone who knew he was about to win. Zephyrian fleet. This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Space Force. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from our system or we will destroy you. Kexthor laughed, a harsh sound of disbelief. You're primitives flying scrap metal. We have 300 warships. You had 300 warships, Admiral Chen replied calmly. You now have 288. In 30 seconds, you'll have fewer. The transmission ended. Around the bridge, Kexthor's crew looked at each other with growing fear. The humans were right. They had already lost 12 ships to impossible weapons, and more human vessels were still emerging from Jupiter's radiation belt. Sir, the sensor operator said quietly, long-range scans show human ships hiding throughout this star system. Behind asteroids and planetary rings inside gas giant atmospheres. There are thousands of them, thousands. The humans had built a fleet that rivaled the combined navies of most council member species. All in secret. All while pretending to be primitive. How? Kexthor whispered. How did they build so much without us seeing it? His question was answered when the human ships opened fire. Their weapons were a strange mix of advanced energy beams and primitive kinetic projectiles. But they worked. Zephyrian shields that should have stopped anything the humans could throw at them failed under the combined assault. They're using our own shield frequencies against us, the tactical officer reported in panic. Somehow they know exactly what frequencies to target. Of course they did. The humans had been studying crashed Zephyrian technology for years. They knew every detail of Zephyrian defensive systems. They had built their weapons specifically to defeat those defenses. The battle turned into a nightmare. Human ships flew attack patterns that made no sense but worked perfectly. They coordinated without any detectable communication signals. They fought with a savage effectiveness that terrified even veteran Zephyrian warriors. And strangest of all, they played music during the battle. Loud, aggressive sounds that they broadcast on all frequencies. The humans called it heavy metal, and they seemed to fight harder when it was playing. Admiral, Commander Yextal said urgently, we need to withdraw. We're being slaughtered. Kexthor looked at the tactical display. In less than an hour, his fleet had been reduced to fewer than 200 ships. The humans were winning a battle they shouldn't have been able to fight. All ships, he ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. Withdraw to minimum safe distance. Signal high command. Tell them we need reinforcements. As the surviving Zephyrian ships pulled back, Admiral Kexthor watched the human fleet reorganize with military precision. These weren't primitives who had gotten lucky. They were a spacefaring civilization that had been hiding their true capabilities for decades. The question now was, what else were the humans hiding? And how much worse was this going to get? The Battle of Saul lasted 18 hours and changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare, technology, and the nature of civilization itself. Across 300 council worlds, military leaders, scientists, and politicians watched in stunned silence as their most basic assumptions about primitive species crumbled before their eyes. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were winning. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council had reconvened in emergency session. The Great Chamber buzzed with panicked chatter in dozens of languages as real-time battle reports flooded in from the Saul system. The Zephyrian Third Fleet is gone, announced High Commander Zorthak, his warrior pride completely shattered. All 300 ships, destroyed or captured. Counselor Vorthak studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. How is this possible? The humans had no space fleet 6 months ago. They had no visible space fleet, Zorthak corrected grimly. But they had been building one in secret for decades. Hidden in asteroid belts, camouflaged in planetary rings, disguised as mining operations. The entire Sol system was a trap, and we walked right into it. The main display showed footage from the battle that would haunt military academies for generations to come. Human ships moved with impossible coordination, executing maneuvers that violated every known principle of space combat. They accelerated at rates that should have killed their crews, turned at angles that should have torn their ships apart, and fought with a savagery that made even veteran warriors uncomfortable. Look at this, Zorthak said, highlighting a section of the battle footage. Human boarding parties attacking our ships with primitive projectile weapons alongside advanced energy beams. They use whatever works regardless of how it looks. The footage showed human soldiers in armored suits storming Zephyrian vessels. They moved through ship corridors like they had been training for this exact scenario their entire lives, which it was becoming clear they had been. Their tactics make no sense, complained General Corthan of the Insectoid Alliance. They sacrifice expensive equipment to save individual soldiers. They fight harder when they're outnumbered. They coordinate without detectable communication signals. And yet they win, Vorthak observed quietly. That was the terrifying truth. Everything about human military doctrine went against accepted galactic warfare principles. But it worked. The Zephyrian fleet, one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, had been completely destroyed by a species that supposedly still used chemical rockets. Show them the worst part, Vorthak said grimly. The display changed to show human salvage operations. In the aftermath of the battle, human ships were methodically collecting Zephyrian wreckage. But they weren't just gathering scrap metal, they were reverse engineering advanced technology in real time. 6 hours after the battle ended, the humans had working copies of our hyperdrive systems, Vorthak reported. 6 hours. It took our greatest scientists 2 centuries to develop that technology. Impossible, declared Counselor Meshtar. No species learns that fast. But the evidence was undeniable. Human engineering teams had swarmed over captured Zephyrian vessels, like they knew exactly what they were looking for. They had taken apart hyperdrive cores, gravity generators, and shield systems with surgical precision, and then they had built improved versions. Their engineering capabilities exceed anything in our databases, Vorthak continued. They don't just copy technology, they understand it completely, and then they make it better. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans weren't just surprisingly advanced. They were learning and improving at a rate that suggested they might soon surpass every species in the galaxy. There's more, Vorthak said reluctantly. Show them the interrogation reports. New displays appeared showing interviews with captured Zephyrian officers. The humans had treated their prisoners well, another violation of expected primitive behavior. But they had also asked very specific questions. The humans knew about the Council, Vorthak explained. They knew about our member species, our technology levels, our military capabilities. They had been studying us for decades, learning everything they could about galactic civilization. How? Demanded Counselor Krental. We monitored their communications. They had no contact with any Council species. They didn't need contact, Vorthak realized with growing horror. They were listening. Every transmission we sent, every signal between Council worlds that passed through their space, they were recording and analyzing it all. The ancient being's crystalline body pulsed with agitated light as he understood the full scope of human preparation. They learned our languages. They studied our technology. They analyzed our military tactics, all from intercepted communications. While we were watching them fight with sticks and stones, Vorthak added bitterly, they were building weapons specifically designed to defeat our most advanced defenses. The most disturbing footage showed human factories working at impossible speeds. Entire spacecraft were being assembled in days rather than years. Production facilities that should have taken decades to build were appearing overnight. Their industrial capacity is beyond anything we've seen from a single world, reported economic advisor Velthar. They're manufacturing ships, weapons, and technology at rates that suggest their entire planetary economy has been militarized for generations. All while making us think they were primitives, Counselor Vorthak said grimly. The final piece of evidence was the most shocking of all. A human ship had arrived at the edge of Council space just hours after the battle's end. It was flying under its own hyperdrive power, technology the humans supposedly didn't have until they captured it from the Zephyrians. Impossible timeline, muttered Chief Scientist Nexvoid. Even if they reverse-engineered our hyperdrive instantly, they couldn't have built a working ship so quickly, unless they had already built the ship and were just waiting for the drive system. Vorthak realized. They knew exactly what they would capture and they were ready for it. The implications were staggering. The humans had planned this entire scenario. They had prepared for decades, maybe centuries, for first contact with alien civilizations. They had studied galactic technology and tactics, built counters to every known weapon system, and prepared their entire civilization for interstellar warfare, all while convincing the galaxy they were harmless primitives. What do we do now? Asked Counselor Threxon. High Commander Vorthak looked around the chamber at 300 species that had never faced a threat like this. The human ambassador will arrive here in 2 days, flying in a ship with technology that didn't exist a week ago. They want to negotiate. Negotiate what? Demanded General Corthon. Membership in the Council, Zorthak replied. As equals. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds from 300 different species. The humans wanted to join the organization they had just defeated in battle, as equals, not as conquered subjects. This is unprecedented, Vorthak said slowly. No species has ever forced their way into the council. No species has ever been capable of it, Zorthak corrected. Until now. As the council debated what to do about humanity, one thing became clear. The galaxy would never be the same. The humans had shattered every assumption about primitive civilizations, demonstrated capabilities that shouldn't exist, and proven that intelligence and determination could overcome any technological disadvantage. The question now was whether the council was ready to accept a new member who had introduced themselves by destroying an entire fleet, or if they would try to fight a species that seemed to specialize in the impossible. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. Behind her, 2 human Marines in dress uniforms maintained perfect formation, their presence somehow managing to intimidate beings who had conquered star systems. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never seen anything quite like this moment. For 3,000 years, new species had entered these halls as supplicants, begging for membership or pleading for mercy. The humans were doing neither. Honored counselors, Ambassador Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. I am Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth government and the human species. We come before you today not as conquered subjects, but as equals seeking membership in this great organization. A ripple of tension moved through the assembled representatives. 300 species watched this single human woman with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and grudging respect. She stood alone at the speaker's podium, but everyone in the chamber knew she represented a civilization that had just destroyed the Zephyrian Third Fleet. Counselor Vorthak, his ancient crystalline form glowing with soft light, spoke first. Ambassador Chen, your species has demonstrated remarkable capabilities, but your introduction to galactic civilization has been violent. Respectfully, Counselor Vorthak, we were not the ones who chose violence, Chen replied smoothly. We offered negotiation. We requested dialogue. The Zephyrian Empire chose to respond with threats of orbital bombardment. High Commander Zorthak shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The human was right and everyone knew it. We defended ourselves, Chen continued. We used the minimum force necessary to protect our world and our people. We took prisoners rather than destroying them. We treated captured enemies with dignity. These are not the actions of a savage species. You destroyed an entire fleet, accused General Corthan of the Insectoid Alliance. We defended our home, Chen replied without hesitation. Any species in this chamber would have done the same. The difference is that we were prepared to do it effectively. That was the heart of the matter, and everyone knew it. The humans hadn't just gotten lucky. They had been ready. More ready than anyone had thought possible. How long have you been preparing for contact with alien civilizations? Asked Counselor Meshitar. Ambassador Chen smiled, and there was something in that expression that made several counselors shift nervously. Longer than you might think, honored counselor. We have been listening to galactic communications for over 2 centuries. We learned your languages, studied your technology, analyzed your military tactics. Impossible, breathed Economic Advisor Velthar. Your technology wasn't advanced enough for interstellar communication interception 2 centuries ago. Our visible technology wasn't advanced enough, Chen corrected. We have always been very good at making things look simpler than they actually are. The implications hit the chamber like a shock wave. The humans hadn't suddenly developed advanced technology. They had been hiding their true capabilities for centuries. You deceived us, accused Counselor Krental. We protected ourselves, Chen replied firmly. When we first detected alien civilizations, we realized we needed to understand what we were dealing with before making contact. So we watched. We listened. We learned. She gestured to the massive display screens around the chamber. We studied every member species of this council. We learned about your histories, your technologies, your methods of incorporating new civilizations, and we prepared accordingly. You prepared for war, Zorthak said grimly. We prepared for every possibility, Chen corrected. War was just one option. We hoped for peaceful contact, but we weren't going to stake our species' survival on hope alone. The chamber fell silent as the council absorbed this information. The humans had been studying galactic civilization for centuries, preparing for first contact with the same methodical thoroughness they applied to everything else. "What do you want from us?" asked Counselor Vorthak. "Partnership," Chen replied simply. "We want to join the galactic community as equals. We want to share our knowledge and learn from yours. We want to contribute to the peace and prosperity of all civilized species." "And if we refuse?" asked General Corthan. Chen's expression didn't change, but somehow her presence seemed to fill the chamber. "Then we will continue to exist as an independent civilization. We will defend ourselves against any threats. And we will remember who chose to be our enemy rather than our friend." It wasn't a threat exactly, but everyone in the chamber understood the implications. The humans had just demonstrated that they could defeat the Zephyrian Empire's finest fleet. Any species that chose to make them an enemy would face the same fate. "You speak of equality," said Counselor Threxon, "but what can your single world offer to a civilization spanning 300 systems?" Chen smiled again, and this time there was genuine warmth in it. "More than you might expect, honored Counselor. Our industrial capacity is unlike anything in your databases. Our technological innovation rate exceeds galactic standards. Our scientific research capabilities are advancing at geometric rates." She activated a small device and new displays appeared around the chamber. They showed human achievements that had been accomplished in the weeks since the Battle of Saul. "We have developed faster-than-light communication systems. We have created quantum computers that operate at efficiencies your best scientists call impossible. We have perfected matter-energy conversion on an industrial scale." The displays showed technology that should have been decades or centuries beyond human capability. But the evidence was undeniable. The humans had done it all in a matter of weeks. "How?" whispered Chief Scientist Nexvoid. "We learn very quickly," Chen replied. "It's what we do best. We adapt, we innovate, we improve. Give us a problem and we will find a solution. Give us a technology and we will make it better." Counselor Vorthak studied the human ambassador with his ancient eyes. In 3,000 years of life, he had never encountered a species quite like this. They combined advanced intelligence with primitive stubbornness, sophisticated technology with savage determination. "You realize," he said slowly, "that accepting you as members would change the Council forever. Your presence would alter the balance of power, shift the dynamics of galactic civilization." "Change is not always bad, honored Counselor," Chen replied. "Sometimes it's necessary for growth." The debate that followed lasted for hours. Species after species rose to voice concerns, ask questions, and express doubts about human membership. But gradually a consensus began to emerge. The humans were too dangerous to make enemies of, too valuable to ignore, and too determined to defeat. They had forced their way into the galactic community through superior preparation and overwhelming capability. The only rational choice was to accept them as equals and hope to benefit from the partnership. The final vote was closer than anyone had expected, 189 in favor of human membership, 111 opposed. It was enough. As ambassador, Chen took her seat in the council chambers, a seat that would represent humanity's interests for generations to come. She smiled at a private joke her species would carry into their galactic future. The other counselors thought, the Battle of Saul had been about protecting Earth from invasion, but that had only been the beginning. The real test would come as humanity began to share their greatest strength with the galaxy, their ability to look at any problem, no matter how impossible, and find a way to solve it. The humans had spent centuries preparing for this moment. Now they were ready to show the galaxy what they could accomplish when they weren't trying to hide their capabilities. The council chambers had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations over 3 millennia, but they had never seen anything like what was about to begin. The age of humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.